Hello, everyone, and welcome. In this recording, I would like to speak about, in a little bit more detail, about the major energies of September, because we are in the present moment already, without even a shadow of a doubt, in totally uncharted territory in so very many ways. For example, karmically speaking, spiritually speaking, technologically speaking included. So it's not just all the invisible, there is a lot in the visible and the material and the concrete as well. And that part, the material, the 3D part, a simpler term, is something that we can observe going on passionately, the bad kind of passion on the world stage. And what we can see on the world stage, collectively speaking, in a different way, in a different manifestation, in a different expression, well, that is also going on within us. And if it's going on within us, it is going on in the universe's wholeness, as an integrity, as the one. So if the universe would be one organism, then whatever is going on within us, around us, it is also going on within itself. However, the divine's realm is separate from ours in a, let's say, more technical term, in a technical way to understand it. So the perceptions, what is going on is totally different, right? But ultimately, the point of view, the perspective that matters the most out of all is the divine's, correlated to the persons, right? The divines is because it is going on within the divine itself. So we cannot be separate from it. We are indirectly in it. But that means so is everyone and everything else, visible or invisible. It is not just us human beings that are going through this, feeling this, are in a certain state. Basically, we can say that all of creation, at least in our corner of, in our universe, is going through this in its own unique particular way, but that is exactly very, very different from one another. So this is exactly why I would like to add a totally different perspective, perhaps a perspective that is beyond astrology. And why do I find this many times important? Astrology, like, it is the love of my life, so I'm not criticizing her, but what I'm actually saying is that when something is truly beyond it, then it is a limiting lens, right? And the reason for this is very simple. There are certain, let's say, dimensions out there which do not respond, or better said, are not perceivable by the mind at all. Let's say that those dimensions are totally separate from another. So the minds, so all of the dimensions that the mind can access, it's not included there. It is blind to the mind, blind to Mercury, blind to our rational, logical understanding, and even blind to the rational part of the soul. So even a divine component of us, because it's not its habitat or whatever reason, we cannot have direct access to it. But that doesn't mean we're totally alien to that dimension. It just means we don't usually navigate there. Let me give you an example, but this is where you kind of require a tiny bit of esoteric understanding. Um, the dimension of pure emotion that has, I don't even want to say totally different logic to it. Its truest logic, its true divine logic, its purest essence is simply not understandable in a human way to us, which means we have to navigate there indirectly. And what is indirectly? Through another part of the divine, which bridges us there. Well, astrology, for example, can bridge us to so very many dimensions, almost infinite. But there are certain dimensions which it simply cannot, because astrology is our human astrology, and we cannot stray from it a big deal because we're human beings. Even if it doesn't matter what our soul is, we are right now in human life and human experience. So we are human beings. So our astrology is the human astrology, if you know what I mean. So that is why it will still reflect our human nature, including our human limitations. However, this is where human beings were also gifted with the ability to channel. They naturally always had the sixth sense. Now, I don't want to go into the pineal gland and all of that, because this has so very many explanations, and all of them are simultaneously valid because you examine it from different points of view. So, long story short, I really don't need to detail this further, because basically every one of my listeners, I imagine, in their own way knows that this is an actual reality and not a myth, not a, this is real. So we do have a sixth sense. And that connects us to places where we don't usually navigate. So one of the places is the divine realms. Of course, it's not easy to get there, right? The alchemist journey or monk's initiation and the Buddha's life, the life of the Christ, the journey there. So that no one said it's easy, but it's possible, it's there, it's been done before. But there are so many alternative ways and different examples of this. For example, an artist, especially when they go a tiny bit insane and they enter into a deep obsession with whatever theme they are working on in the present moment, like they can go into depths where the normal person would say, oh my goodness, this is total insanity, get me out of this state. For an artist, that's like, I don't know, some of those people ultimately who are very, very gifted naturally to dive deeply into waters, deep divers. Not everyone can do it. Even if you train, simply not everyone has those genes. So some people, like those artists, can dive deeper than sanity itself and emerge totally unharmed or with minor scars, so to speak. But what is in that state of what seems to us, let's say, insanity, that artistic catharsis? Well, Mercury cannot ever translate it. However, if Mercury receives help from every other planet, maybe a piece of, well, ultimately artistic creation, but one that has great power, like a song, that song, or that orchestral arrangement, that bird who sings. So something may reflect it one way or another. So indirectly, we can still get there. We can still get to the understanding, but that is not rational understanding. That is more like inner standing. That is more like simply the divine putting a non-rational knowledge into your head, and that being a source of knowledge for you, if you know what I mean. A faith, but not a typical religious faith that you cultivate, something that you, without explanation, just know, and that is a truth of yours. So after this long philosophy, and I'm so sorry for this, many times in life, that explains it and not anything that we can understand rationally. Going back to our main theme month of September, well, let's start with a bit of astrology. Pluto back at for the last and final time in our lifetimes to 29 degree of Capricorn. So the final tower moment for the old paradigm, whatever that means, including in our lives. And all of us feel this Pluto. And right now, I'm actually not speaking about the pure psychological perspective, astrological perspective, what it does, the grave karmic, because that's part, but more like something inevitably, which used to be almost like a bone in our body, like a rib, is pulverizing, and we know that we have to let it go and allow it to transform, allow it to go its own way in the sense that it will change inevitably, whatever that is in our lives, something internal, something external, whatever area of life this may be. Let me give you an example. For some people, it's very earthly, that job since 2008. That job, which is bittersweet, which is both the angel, your saving grace, which saved you from something, but it became the devil afterwards because nothing lasts forever, or everything undergoes transformation, especially when the labor laws and the work industry changes. You know what I mean? So other people career, other people soul calling, love life, partner, a friendship, a relationship, your home, family, for others deeply spiritual, for others deeply psychological, that trauma that I couldn't overcome. And chances are I didn't overcome it, so it's staying. And then is when you get the other understanding. But what if this is my greatest power and I just need to look at it from a different angle and see why this makes me a giant, like a titan? Before all my life, maybe I felt like a flea. But if I look at it from a different angle, maybe a more divine angle, I'm actually a giant, a titan. So, yes, this is one way this Pluto can play out, and this is why, again, the divine perspective, that which may be, as I said again, not even astrology or anything mercurial, so that which you can perceive with your mind and make sense of it can offer you. But for example, a really, really deep and elated state of prayer or connection with the divine, something that is really beyond textbook. And chances are Pluto is breaking all of the textbooks. So whatever you might have learned from here and there from human sources, forget that. Right now, forget that, because you are drawing the solution out from the divine's well. You're scooping it up. Nothing earthly may help you. Why? Because you are forced. Uranus, this year was, let's just call it like that. This year was super hyper exaggeratedly Uranian. So that's why Uranus. So what I'm saying here is Uranus requires us to be inventors, groundbreakers. The past can help us. The future is not invisible. It's simply not yet created. It's unborn. So it is there as a shapeless, formless mass mountain of pure plasmatic energy and ether and a lot of emotion and dream essence to go with it. But it's unborn, so it can take any shape and form it will ultimately want to, it will be guided to. And our inner being knows that. So you can imagine that we are in the state of suspense, but also in the state of totally being lost in one way or another. Some people are very grounded and they don't feel being lost necessarily in a very material, earthly human way. Let's say they know their career, they're on it, everything is under control. Even if they struggle, but they know it, they know the game, they're playing the game, they're on it. But maybe their love life might be really the waters of Pisces. Ether, total ether. You feel it, you feel the potential that I'm so capable of a love relationship or whatever that is, but it doesn't make any sense. You don't know what to do, and the universe gives you mixed messages where you don't know what it's trying to say, and probably it's just reacting to you. But anyway, this is one example. All of us are in this state, at least in one personal dimension. So that feels like a crisis that probably, and this is where I now have to call astrology to help me a little bit, started in 2020, around 2020, plus minus 2-3 years. But this felt like a strong crisis that many times was almost there, almost the breakthrough, almost something to, you know, get you on the other side. Or if that this feels like being lost at an ocean, in on an ocean, Neptune. Again, this year was Uranian, but Neptune was flooding the background. You know what I mean? It was in water almost like. So the water element, Neptune, the unconscious and the soul was very much there. So where I'm going with this is that it really, really, if we're on water, we need to get to the shore. So we need, if you're water, if you're drowning, if you're going down, that we need to, then we need to reach the surface or the shore, or some people to fly out of the water to catapult up in the, but we need to get the water element manageable or adapt to it or evolve. Pluto, again, Pluto, evolve some organ or limb or extra limb or something to make us super quick or super efficient in water. So one way or another, but we need to get there. And this is what Pluto is doing in its own way. When logic fails, because do not forget, again, 2020, Mercury was part of that big, fated, massive conjunction that spelled out the end of the old paradigm and the old order. Mercury was part of it. So this is where we're shedding off the old type of human understanding the scientific, empirical, Uranian understanding, because Uranus, its relationship with humankind is also upgrading. It is becoming totally quantum. In quantum, the Newtonian physics are irrelevant. So we are going into the quantum age where the classic type of physics are just an illusion and will be seen and known as just a byproduct of the physics of consciousness. And Earth is a big living organism, or and it has a consciousness and we're part of it. So I think I just said everything that needs to be said. That's it, really. So this is why we're shedding off the old type of logic, understanding, and perceiving the way we perceive everything down to the primary animalistic level. So even that is upgrading to the new human, whatever that may be. No one knows what that. I don't know. Maybe only prophets know, but not us small people, to be totally honest with you. So that's what's happening. You can imagine that we are not supposed to understand it with the mind and be prepared. So it is almost like we are inventors at the table. You can imagine that an inventor and Tesla, Newton, I don't, those people. How many hours, how many tears, neurons, rage fits, frustration, hell itself, emotionally and mentally and whatever they faced until it made sense to them. When it made sense to them, the invention or whatever it was, the theory or that very quickly came together. Or as the example of other inventors, for example, Mendeleev, the father of the periodic table, it just didn't want to come together in a mercurial way. So he dreamed it up, literally. Literally. It doesn't matter because the invention, it's still gonna be there. So this is how to envisage this period, what we're doing. Sometimes we build a castle, we think it's strong, it crumbles. And we repeat and we repeat and it still crumbles. Or the inventor's journey, the alchemist's journey. I know that in the lives of some of us, it is not a laughing matter. It is where we can't make a fairy tale or a nice little philosophical story about it because it's sad or bad or not easy. And yet, this is what the divine asks from us, to detach from the difficulty level and see what we've done so far. Because when we see it from a more detached from heaven, from the perspective of heaven's eyes, so to speak, then we'll see that, oh my God, I can't believe that me, that small little flea, made this impossible journey. This is where instead of all the obstacles, you will start to see all the moments in the past where the impossible became possible for you. And because you were subjectively living it there and then, you did not see the miraculous part. And now you see it. And this builds up like a slingshot. When the faith, power, Pluto move again for the last time for a very long time, 200 some 56 something like that years, in the sign of Capricorn at the Tenerific degree, slingshot into the new, the next. And we are the seeds of it, the seeders of it, as beings of pure consciousness. We are parents of it, builders of it, seeders of it, but also more than what we understand as the typical us, our unconscious, the water, remember, the ocean, we are just a small island surrounded by the ocean of our unconscious. So we need to make friends with the unconscious, with our inner whatever, with our inner something, inner victim, inner demon, inner hero. Sometimes that needs to be a little bit quieted down. We need to make friends with our unconscious, and not through just psychological understanding, because that type of understanding does not please or not seen as a friendly gesture by the unconscious forces, because you're dissecting it. You're like a doctor. You're performing an autopsy, but you're alive. So I'm not even sure how to word this. You're performing an autopsy on yourself while still alive. So let us limit the intrusion of Uranian science into the more sensitive parts of our souls, because there we need the gentlest type of understanding, and that requires the language of love. And the language of love is beyond astrology, beyond anything. However, humankind is not alien to that. We alienated ourselves, but we were once inhabitants of that dimension. And the grand masters, or call them however you want, of course, like the Buddha or the prophets, Christ, all of these wonderful souls came periodically to remind us. They didn't have to do all that much in the sense of teaching. No, no, no. They just reminded us. It was like a reminder. Hey guys, this was already always in you, and the way to access it is to not want to know life, just live it, if that makes sense. Don't want to know. Limit certain type of understand. Why? Well, wasn't that the apple which Eve, you know, where I'm going with it? Wasn't that the apple? The knowledge, the empirical understanding, which takes away innocence, and with innocence, the divine sparks higher expression. That's the gesture of falling into matter. So when we get that innocence back, that's when things really, really, really start to happen. So this is what's happening to us, getting that innocence back, even though it feels like an operation without anesthetic. It's not Pluto. There is finishing its job. But Neptune is insistingly inviting us to connect to the divine source beyond any time, beyond understanding even. Why? It opposes Virgo, Mercury's best place, Mercury's most favored armchair, or call it however, where Mercury is the happiest. And Neptune is compared to Mercury, well, yes, extremely overpowering. At home, in Pisces, it is almost like Mercury is sitting in his favorite and most comfortable rubber ducky, but Neptune is like a juggernaut or those big warships. Compare the size, like a airplane carrier ship. So you can imagine that Neptune will always have the upper hand. So right now, Neptune is inviting Mercury to distract himself. You don't need to allow immersion into a different kind of understanding. And Mercury is trying his very hardest to do this, but Mercury has to bypass everything that we were taught of from birth. Everyone's included. So we have Mercury has to bypass our software. So that's why Mercury is struggling. We need to help it by quieting him down. All of us are hyperactive and all of us have some kind of ADHD type of manifestation or behavior or something in our lives. Why? Because Jupiter is in Gemini, expanding Mercury's expression of the Gemini type of activities. But at the same time, um, Neptune is doing this to Mercury. Mercury's home, Mercury's realm of Virgo. So it's almost like a permanent deluge of things that Mercury cannot explain. So you can imagine that the mind is a little bit in panic mode. When will this end? When will I make sense of it? When will I know how to swim in a totally efficient and safe way? When will this swimming lesson not feel like a life crisis or a survival lesson anymore? When will it just become pleasant? So you can imagine that Mercury, the mind, is not in easy mode. It is struggling. We need to help it. And we help it by quieting it. We help it by being its best friend and telling it as many times as it needs, even if it needs 10,000 times a day, you're okay. Trust, 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 trust. All you can do is trust, because Mercury's powers, Virgo, are opposed by not just a normal Neptune, but an energetic. Okay, it's now 28 degrees right now, but that's still an energetic type of energy. So energetic Neptune, which is 2025, but really in 2026 is gonna start a new dream. And you might think in yourself that, oh, how cute, a new dream. Is that what I need for survival? Blah, blah, blah. Because Aries energy, right? But let's understand the divine expression. The divine himself is ready to dream us anew. Do you get the gravity of it? So we need to find we need to allow the new dream, the new us, to comfortably settle into our souls without judgment, without prejudice, without the obsessive OCD type of control we want to have over our lives. It's clear that many of us are outside of our comfort zones. You always used to be a whatever, and no matter what I do, my own destiny is pushing me out of that career. This is where it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be so more okay than you can ever possibly dream of once you allow yourself to be pushed over the fence to the other side. Okay, a big part of your life and your ego, your personality, your norm, your Saturn, your backbone. Your Capricorn is going to be missing. It's almost like when a person loses a big percentage of blood or brain matter or something vital. Yes, but if it is the divine who guaranteed you that you're going to be okay, then you can imagine that all you can do is really try. Okay, maybe 99% of every other person would be doomed in your situation, and you have to believe that you're in that 0.01% who is not. And that the reason why you cannot believe it, because that might give you the illusion that you've been chosen or you're special. You're not special. No one is special. It's just throwing dice. Someone has to be in that 0.01%, either in good or in bad. But if the divine promised you that you're going to be on the other side, you're going to be on the other side. Because if you're not going to be on the other side, do you know what the divine would do? Insist obsessively almost. Show you the path, what you need, where you need to turn around, or you get what I'm turn you forcefully, insistently beg you to go on the right path, which will get you there alive and well and happy. But if it didn't do that, believe it or not, you're on the right path, even though you feel totally lost, totally in the dark. But as I said, in deep sea, where there is no sunlight and really no sunlight in the literal sense, total darkness, there is still light because there is bioluminescence and it's powerful, beautiful, strong, and it for the being who is using that as a navigation tool or hunting tool, it is the biggest blessing. It doesn't require the sunlight in the classical sense. It is the sun in itself. We are all different. Maybe you are like the 0.0.0.1% of life forms that adapted to thrive, be well at the abyssal depths of the ocean. So, yes. So, this is why September finally we got to the conclusion. This is what September is going to be about. Our lives through our own unique reflection for either other people or in career or in dreams or in feelings, or when we use escapism, but through something will remind us of who we truly are, what we need to allow to pass, and how to invite the new in, even if that is totally uncertain. This September is going to be a massive lesson about trust. And chances are trusting the divine. And in order to do that, that which goes beyond human understanding is exactly this one's relationship with the divine source. That goes beyond anything. There is no sin there. Why? Because the very philosophy that sin is possible is no longer there. That Saturn was dissolved by Pisces. That's the most pure connection, where there is no boundary between us and the divine. We can be that brutally honest. That is how we invite sunlight even to those depths where it is impossible. So this is what September is going to be about. So things are going to play out in our lives big time. and big karma. All of this. Okay, I've spoken about planets, but let's add a bit to this. The autumn or Libra equinox, that's big. Why? Because so many things right now hang in Libra. I don't want to allow misunderstanding to take place, so let me rephrase that. Libra is such a vital and important component of our lives right now in the way that we have no clue about it. We're in a way a bit clueless about that, we have absolutely no idea. On the world stage, Libra is diplomacy and law, application of the law. I said everything. In our lives, Libra, it doesn't matter where, in which which house, sorry, which part of our lives, which house, because it is still a decision energy, a preference energy, weighing energy, and philosophical energy in its own right, but in the Venusian way. What would I love? How do I feel about this thought, this principle, this relationship? And you got it. Contracts, relationships, relationships. Relationships are a big, 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 big theme. Not just because Sun entering Libra, right? Libra equinox is about relationships mainly, that part of the year, but also because the ruler, Venus, is going to be still in the sign of Libra at the time of the equinox at 29 degrees. Libra is one of the most technically karmic signs out there. And what do I mean by that? Well, it's non-animate. It is pure philosophy. It is pure thought. So karma is gonna be very, very almost like custom tailored when it plays out in a Libran way. It's almost like when you go to the tailor and the suit they make you, well, it's like literally like something guided the hand of the tailor. It's so perfect. That's how this type of karma feels. And it's many ways, either in relationships, legally speaking, because these are the big expressions of Libra, or marriage, love, and things like that, contracts. So the South Node is there, Black Moon Lilith is there, and again, at the time of the equinox, Venus is still home, gravely highlighted by the anaretic degree. So that is truly, oh, and highlighted by the anaretic degree. What does that mean? It is in a by the degree square formation with, you guessed it, Pluto. So that's big. Whatever karmic, sorry, again, the cycle of this in my hemisphere autumn period, so the next 3 months, that karmic cycle is going to be very decisive in certain ways for all of us. Okay, it might not be done and dusted in the next 3 months, but the decision or fate is sealed. That is definitely gonna be there. But besides the equinox, Mars in Cancer, and is gonna be in Cancer significantly for the next 7 months or so. Why? Because it goes traverses Cancer, enters Leo, stays a little bit, December, gonna retrograde back into Cancer. So I said everything there. Protecting the home, protecting the family, protecting my energy, my space, my emotions, my most sacred self, fighting for love, family, nurture, patriotism, my borders, my yard, the negative expression where that can be extreme, very, very extreme. My property, my wife, because no one said a delusion cannot trigger. Actually, Mars in the sign of Cancer is very, very triggered by emotions. And it doesn't care if that is a delusion, because a delusion is believed in that moment, right? Or it's real. And Mars in Cancer is very passive aggressive. And it fights, how should I say? It has its own toxicity. A different type of toxicity than Scorpio, but it has a toxicity to itself as well. Mm. There are some types of sea urchin which you really don't want to go near. And that's not a direct, toxicity. You just need to go near it and it triggers. That's how Cancer is. The shell can be toxic, very much. Even if the animal itself is not a toxic hunter. But a self-defense mechanism. Mars in Cancer is also very preemptive. Well, if the crab, right, sees that it's gonna be attacked imminently, it will definitely pinch before it's attacked, because, right, the pincer, and especially if it's one of those crabs which can crush coconuts or stuff like bones with its pincer, those big kind of coconut crabs, or how you call them, then you really don't want to be in aggressive mode with that type of crab. Mars in Cancer. The more emotion, the more power. The more drama, the more power. But this can also represent many times a Piscean expression as well. Why? Well, Cancer has a Pisces decan to it, a Piscean decan to it, where Mars will be. So, long story short, where one amplifies its victimhood and they receive a lot of attention, help, support, blah, blah, blah. That can also be where Mars is used against the self, but that leads to wonderful rewards. So it's tricky. It's a tricky energy, but the highest expression is truly what we need. So it's up to all of us to make sure Mars in Cancer has its highest expression. Nurturer, carer, light worker, the support. But that support, which is totally devoted and dedicated. So again, light worker. What comes in my mind is, the Vestals. So the priestesses of Vesta, they were not just sacred virgins, their healing powers were legendary. With their purity and their pure dedication to the greater good, to pure benevolence, their faith could heal many wounds, and so that is the highest expression of Mars in Cancer. So that's one thing. Then there is Jupiter in Gemini. Mind over matter, but in both ways. This can be our doom, but also our salvation. salvation. Why? If we finally figure out that empowering our thoughts, especially the lower thoughts, with a tiny dose of faith, humor, optimism, a different kind of logic, the opposite logic. Jupiter rules Sagittarius, the opposite sign of Gemini. That type of, how should I even, when Gemini learns to incorporate the Sag vibe, so to speak, then when magic starts to truly happen, that's when believing is seeing. Not seeing is the opposite. Believing is seeing. That is what we need to muster up, cook up, so to speak. And going back to your Uranus, Uranus will keep on awakening us, keeping us awake, wide awake, both literally and symbolically, revealing things to us, truth. Chiron in Aries continuing to insist on healing the self wound. And the nodes of the moon make big connections. Mars T-squaring the nodes of the moon. So Aries Libra axis, it rules Aries. So in Cancer, it's a bit not so strong. And this affects the North Node in Aries. What does this mean? You need to sensitize a bit. You need to tune down this fire. You need to become the most gentlest version of yourself while progressing towards the self-centered goals and needs. And when I say self-centered, don't understand it in a negative way. It's a must. For some, let me give you an example where it's self-centered and it's really not. A father, a I don't. Oh, I want to say obsessively, but I shouldn't use that term. Really forcefully fighting for money, resources. It doesn't matter what he has to do. He doesn't look at, how should I say, the corpses that he has to walk on sometimes. But in order to help his family survive. You see what I mean? North Node in Aries. You do that. You need to be a bit obsessed, but why you're doing it for your family, and how this would play out in this example, the Mars in Cancer. You know when enough is enough, and then you just choose to struggle and not walk through corpses because you've done that a little bit and it gave you an extra boost, an extra power. But now for your own morality, you can go back to a bit of a struggle mode because that will help your soul, your spirit. This is one of the example. To know when you must truly walk through corpses for the sake of your family and child, and to know when you really can afford to be moral, your most moral self, because life does not require from you anymore to do that, to be in the extreme survival mode. So know when to stop, know when to change the tune, right? And also Libra, South Node and Libra, relationships. All of 2020, no, better said, the second half of 2023, all of 2024 was very, very significant for relationship to have decisive moments, either to change, either to transform, either to end, either to form, either to accept that it is formed already, where the situationships become like accepted as, okay, we're together. I don't even want someone else. I want you, bye. I'm okay with this. Let's make it work for us even better. And the other person says, you know what, you're absolutely right. Let's do this. This is an example. But the opposite is also true when, you know what, we don't really love each other in that way. We're just together because we're very good co-workers or something. Shouldn't we keep our soul connection alive? Because I want you to be always part of my life, but I also want to have romantic life as well. So can we somehow be friends? And the other person says, you know what, you're absolutely right. Let's see what it is that we can do to transform our relationship. Because there it is. But of course, there's also dramatic example where they've been karmic enemies for the past 20 years now. Finally, the war ends one way or another, either through peace or life really separates them, where relocation or something, or one of them uh, attracts a new partner, and that partner says, detach, leave the other person alone if you want to live with me, if you want a new relationship with me. And the person makes the choice, and that ends the karmic ending, beginning, self note what it is that you need to release. Because some people need to release the solitude, the hermit mode, the where I don't want to be with anyone else. But then again, I'm suffering immensely because of this, but I'm not admitting it to myself because I'm independent. This ends. But the cherry on top in September is the partial lunar eclipse in Pisces. Now, maybe eclipse wise, it is not the most potent eclipse because it's pretty far from the North Node, especially that it's even in another sign. But technically, it's a valid eclipse. But another element, the fact that it's a super full moon and what's happening in the sky at the same time makes it very, very, very impacting. And it's either a very strong spiritual energy, psychological, psychoanalytical. Why did I separate the two? Because psychoanalytical is where you have to dive in, not just be in the realm of psychology, they're comfortable on your rubber ducky, but dive deeply. So, or medical, because Pisces is very much about the immune system and the blood hormones, the blood chemistry. And it's a full moon, which means the opposite sign is very much involved. Moon in the sign of Virgo. Big, 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 big energy. And they T square, so the sun and moon, the full moon, the galactic center. So it has a big message for us as well. So it's not going to be easy. This can really, really feel fated, but this is really, really good for big endings, releasing, accepting, integrating. Tears are going to flow like rivers, but this may be the good type of tears, the release, the forgiveness, the pain washed away. And this is a very dissolving energy. So everyone, please be careful with escapism, especially when it is substances that come from laboratories. They can dissolve you under this eclipse energy, especially if something vital is in. Be careful. This can also represent flooding, the element of water, and stuff is gonna unfold on seas, even in a non-symbolic way. There is war on sea, and but not just war, maybe a big discovery, because full moon reveals something important. What's at the bottom of the ocean? Archaeological ruin, or a massive something that changes history or our understanding of history big time. But this is also karmic endings. And I want to believe, I really, really want to believe with all my heart that somehow this eclipse, even if it doesn't mean peace, but it will be a big push towards peace, ending the Pisces victimhood, the trauma, the hurt, the pain, the who owns what. And but I'm not referring to one country, I'm referring to everywhere and everything, including in our own lives, which have nothing to do with politics. Let me give you an example. And this is so ridiculous, but I think it explains the best. When I was in first grade, there was like a secret Santa, and the person who chose me forgot, but they were a 7-year-old child. So of course they forgot. But the 7-year-old child, me, didn't understand it as such. And I must say, our family was poor. And I spent not just my money, but I forced my mom to really buy an expensive gift into that secret Santa. She did it. She had to. Because a mystic is also a mystic when he's 7. So, long story short, because he forgot, he only told his mother last minute, and the best she could do is make a hand drawing. But you can imagine everyone else received real gifts. I received a really ugly hand drawing. And it caused a massive trauma where something inside of me said to the universe, you will never have the pleasure to gift anything in your in this incarnation to me ever again. Well, you can imagine that in my case, because I know my own star chart and stuff like this, is what Neptune will, and the eclipse by Neptune, because Neptune will be part of the eclipse, will dissolve like acid out of me, where I will understand that we were seven. Everyone forgets when they're 7, because when you're 7, life really isn't about the physical world. Thank God. Now I understand. So now it's so easy. I laugh about this. Now it's so easy to understand, right? But this tormented me for most of my waking life, and I had no clue. So, anyway, but this ridiculous little example of mine can be a big thing if you put it into context. Put it into international and historic context. Forgiveness. We need to grow up, and we're just people. You understand? This can really be a miraculous energy, pushing aggressively spiritually, because Pisces is the Christ consciousness, right? the oneness, the communion with everything, pushing things into the right direction, especially if we give spiritual power to this. If we give this eclipse our power, this super full moon is gonna do that. It is gonna soak our very reality with the energy of peace. So September can be a time of miracles. However, psychologically speaking, this may be very hard for some people, because the only way you can truly turn this energy into a miraculous expression is if you have a tiny bit of willingness to open your heart and want to see life in a bit philosophical way, at least. If you necessarily want to see it through the eyes of the victim, this energy will show you why that is not a good idea. So no, let's not do that. Let's allow this energy to do a lot of good. Let's allow this energy to wash away the inner demons, truly, to drown them, especially the most aggressive ones. And maybe this, what I said, might not be the case in everyone's life, but that's even better, because then you can drown the external inner demon, the spirit of what you don't want to see in the world. Drown it with your faith, with your belief in whatever counters that spirit. If it's war that you do not like, the spirit of war. Now, you might, this is like a side note for technical reasons. In astrology, that's kind of Mars, right? But if we get a bit outside of astrology, let's say that might take the name of Baal, Baal. Anyway, if we don't want that spirit to work as strongly in the world as it does, well, we have to feed the spirit of peace, right? Or if we don't want to see the spirit of lust in the world, well, then the solution is not to Saturnize it, but it is to support its sacred version, one way or another, through arts, through music, through whatever. For example, or if we don't want to see the spirit of greed playing out in the world, we have to somehow invite the spirit of the opposite, unconditional love, into our lives one way or another. So these are just examples. So September is going to be big, it's going to be tough, especially from a very psychological way, because we are so immersed into a whirlpool. We don't know where we're going, and we're lost and scared and frustrated and angry, but at the same time full of hope, full of anticipation. I know I can do it. I know I'm not crazy. I feel it in every cell of my body. And these two powers are opposite dichotomous, and they still need to be good fellows, because this is how our engine, two opposing forces, right, are our propulsion. The rocket fuel, or the rocket fuel igniting, it will get us somewhere. Even if it's uncharted territory, we must trust our lives, the divine, the lives that the divine ultimately insists us to have. Because if not, there was so much that could take us away to the other side, beginning from 2020 onwards, in a real sense. If the frequency did not reject us, then chances are the divine really wants us to, insistingly wants us to be here. So I really hope that this helped you, and I hope that this isn't just my philosophical vomit here. I hope that you managed to understand, especially the non-astrological part of what's going on. A change of divine humor, even, but that which no one and nothing can fathom at the present moment. Not if our archons can't, then we can't either. So thank you everyone. Until next time. Bye for now.